Good day, everybody, and this is a little special, an extra bonus live that I'm doing this week, all on you getting to know me, as well as how important I think it is for us to think about the missing piece in our peaceful eating, body neutrality, fat positive, all the things journey that we might need to find a space in this world where we feel like we have peace. So my name is Tracy Brown, and I'm going to introduce myself, tell my story a little bit more today. I've only done it little bitty pieces here or there. Some of you know it pretty well if you've been following me long enough, and some of you kind of know, but maybe not. So, and the reason I'm sitting here is it's the only space that I can find. It's got a little bit of shade, but it is hot as blazes out here. So this video might not last too long. Let's see how it goes. It will last as long as you all have questions or comments. If you want to ask me any questions about my own journey, I'm here to answer that. And then to answer any questions about the Peace with Food community. We are closing the doors. Now, I don't like to do that false scarcity thing, but I am not going to be talking too much about it because I want to actually really put my focus on the folks in the group who have taken that leap with me to create something that I'm going to talk about today. So before I get started into talking about me, a little bit about the program is it's really created as a space for, honestly, who usually shows up to hang out with me are highly sensitive people who are truth tellers, who want to get to the bottom of things, and they've just had enough of any more days, weeks, months, or years that go by, and not fully feel like there's a path to get where they want to go. Now, that doesn't mean that path isn't windy, and sometimes we got to add pieces here and leave out other pieces of the puzzle, ignore some things in terms of what we see out there that everybody else talks about, and really focus on what's really important to you. And so it's interesting, if I look at all the current clients I have now, there's not one person that really has like every single thing in common. But the main things that are in common are what kind of knit us all together. And I think that's something that's often missing in our lives, right? Is that like, I've got somebody, I was wondering if you guys, and maybe you could put an emoji below if you're like, I have somebody, one person, whether it's a professional or a friend or a relative or somebody I work with, somebody I go to church with, that like, we get each other. And that's the point of this community. There's lots of people out there to talk about attuned eating and health at every size and the science behind it. But I want a place where people really understand that it matters how we talk to ourselves, how we talk to each other, how we hold space for each other. And then recognizing that we don't want to overcomplicate this either. Sometimes we get really, because our brains come into it from a diet culture, survival perspective, we come in to anything we start to do is, I got to do it right, and what are the rules, and how does this work? And it's like, we don't do that here in this community. We really focus on, okay, with the resources and bandwidth I have, what can I do to create just a little bit more space in my life for some peace and for some choice? And so before I go, if anybody is thinking about like, what is it like to be a part of this community, I've done lots of posts and videos about it this past week. I'll definitely put the link below. But the only reason I'm closing the door now is, like I said, so I can focus on the people who have jumped on board. And, this video is for people who just want to get to know me, for people who may be interested, but they're not for sure if they want it or need it. And this is where your opportunity to ask me questions about, like, and this is kind of the day, so it's, today and tomorrow, I'm closing it tomorrow. It's just a temporary closure, but I'm not sure when I'm going to say what date that's going to be. It's really about like how the group is going, and ultimately the point of the group is to, I had this, and I was actually telling somebody in the group, is that my vision is to have not just like a couple or a dozen, but wouldn't it be cool if there were like a couple hundred people who were just loving and highly sensitive? And I figure that the more people that are in this group, the more people who are going to understand, have different life perspectives. So, when there's 12 people, you're likely not going to have a person with disordered eating, or might be some people in there who, like, my eating's pretty okay, it's just that I need a non-diet space to talk through some of my medical nutrition things, or my chronic pain things. You know, there's 12 people in a group. We're all going to be loving, but not everybody's going to have like the sense of like, yeah, I know, and this is what not that I'm going to give you advice, but here's some things that have helped me. But I figure if there are lots more people who are all equally loving, sensitive, kind, trying to learn how to have good boundaries, and learn how to what the balance is between like taking care of yourself and still being who you truly are, which is a heart for people. Those are tend to the people that come, but I wanted to create a space where it's like there's more than just one person that gets like your constellation of maybe issues you're working through, and know that like that's not a forever thing, and things do get better and progress. It's just sometimes we have to find the right pieces. So it's going to be, my goal is that this big diverse group, but what is the nugget inside of all of us is this like deep heart for each other and to feel seen and heard. And that's not what I always see in groups, and that's my dream and my vision to help create that, because I would love to be, in that group like all day, every day, just hearing, I get something out of that, not just like you guys, just being around people that are like me, I would enjoy as well. So I want to talk I want to talk about me. That's a weird statement to make, but I want you to know my background, who I am and where I came from, so you can understand why this group is so important to me and why I'm so driven to create this space and to provide as much non-diet information as possible in its most actionable way. So I didn't create the didactic part, the information part. Everything has an action step with it, that if you do all the content, you do the journaling, you do the things, and you discuss it, you are going to grow. That's just period. That's how it's going to be. So anyway, my background is very in a lower middle class, very, very rural area, and when I developed eating disorder, everybody in the whole county knew it and had a silent opinion about it, and there wasn't much escape from the toll it was taking on me, my family, people that were close to me, and there was nowhere to hide, and there was not much support. I was super lucky to find a woman who wouldn't, who was probably like very, very early, small handful of people across the country. I mean, there were non-dietitians going back 30 years, but to have a couple in your state was amazing, and to have one where I grew up, like 30 minutes from where I grew up, was just a miracle. And it wasn't somebody who actually had a lot of eating disorder training, but just was not a traditional dietitian. She was very much a Ellen Satter-ish, Ellen Satter-ish kind of dietitian. So I think that she kind of took that strategy of division of responsibility and used it on me, an angry, perfectionistic, highly self-critical, sensitive, self-hating teenager, and she applied that to me. And I would beg her for like, tell me how many calories is in this, and is this okay to eat, and what should I do? And she would just simply, here's a chart. If that's something that's important to you. Okay, Chuck. It's my dog, y'all. Most of you know his issue, but he's okay. But she was just like, okay, here's what it means to eat 1,200, 14, 16, 1,800 calories. And I wonder what the side effects are for you if you did any of these numbers. And she knew good and well that none of this was going to help me. So one of the most important things she did right off the bat is like actually give me choice and autonomy. And that was something I didn't have in most of my life. So right there, that's something that I learned really quick, like, oh, like when people feel like, here's the information, and this is how's it going to impact, and here's how it's going to impact your current physiologic status. What do you want to do with this? And how's that impact you? I'm like, oh, well, my brain could click in because she didn't push up against, no, you shouldn't do that. It's, here's the information. What do you think about it? And so it engaged my own sense of like, a sense of safety and choice. And so I was able to start to make some better choices in terms of my health. And that went on. And there's lots of things like letting me choose food. So it reminds me right now, the current dilemma I think a lot of people are in dilemma one that I see people in groups, especially online, and all my clients come to this. It's like either turning intuitive eating into another diet because that's the framework our brain has, or trying to eat all the foods but not recognizing accurate signals yet because we've got too much fight, flight, or freeze going on to know how to negotiate what's accurate hunger and fullness. How do we build our, we don't always have the capacity to know what to do with how we feel, so we restrict or binge or purge or over-exercise or under-exercise or all kinds of other behaviors, self-harm, to manage that, and we miss the signals. Or there's a level of like, we just need a nest. We need some support. And I was so lucky to get all of that pretty quickly. Now, she didn't have the experience to work on the internalized fat phobia that was out there in the world, or the internalized fat phobia that I had learned from in my own environment, and then the external stuff that I could see everywhere. She didn't have the experience for that, and that was the missing piece that I had to learn later on. But just want to share with you, that's the beginning. I got to work with somebody who was loving, let me make choices, even if they were the wrong choices. But they were what I needed to do to feel like I had a voice and had some say, and she taught me how to reach out. And lastly, she didn't collude with anything diet culture. She said, if you want to eat dinner rolls, and maybe you have seen that video where I said I needed to, for like, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, I had dinner rolls like 3 times a day. And they weren't the little ones. They were like the giant ones from like the grocery store bakery that were soft and fluffy and delicious, because that's the only carbs I would eat, for a while, because I still had a little bit of that sympathetic clinging on to like food rules around carbs, even though I would eat dessert. My rules were all very convoluted, like so many of ours. I'd eat these kind of carbs, but not these kind of carbs, and none of it really makes any scientific sense, but it was something that my brain used to manage the body, anxiety and shame and rage and all that. So in our community, this is the stuff we talk about, is like, what sensations are you feeling? Has that been a low level thing, that's what you're used to, or is this something that's very from right now? And what do all these different pieces mean, these aspects of us, what do they need? That way you can separate, okay, here's physiologic hunger and fullness, here's my diet voice stuff, here's my safety need stuff, here's my need to be in a safe relationship with all of this stuff, and that's the point. And so, and I've skipped a little part here of how I came on to understand that fat phobia was a thing, is because I got called, I didn't get called in gently when I was a teenager. I was 18, and all the other people in treatment with me were, they've been in treatment many times. And I was sincerely like, only 50% of the people in treatment were in small bodies. And right there, that was a jolt to like, the brain experience, right? Is that like, if you get small enough, then you get paid attention to, and then you'll get some help. And I was lucky to like have a variety of shapes, sizes, and I even was in treatment with somebody who was physically disabled, so in a wheelchair. And I just had this, again, very fortunate experience really early on to recognize that eating disorders do not discriminate. People of all shapes and sizes have them, and everybody deserves care. And it's interesting because in that bubble I was in, everybody was made. You're made. If you're in treatment, you're made to eat. It doesn't matter what. And I know that's not always the case in modern day treatment facilities. That like some people get pushed to eat, some essentially, and that's not something. That's also something that I think you all know that I'm a stand for, is that like everyone must get nutritionally repleted to have accurate signals on hunger and fullness. So that's something really important I learned there, and that jump started my journey into dismantling diet culture and fat phobia within my own cells, essentially. And it's really, really important work, whether it's something that mentally, but doesn't feel like it's like fully in your body yet. The reason sometimes it's not fully in our bodies is that there will be an aspect of us that needs to hold on to this body hatred. And it may not be the part of you, actually, that doesn't know better. There may be a part that really, really, really knows better. Like, all bodies, that's something to be fixed. And I said, there's nothing about your body that needs to be fixed. Now, this process really isn't about not caring about your nutrition and your health. It is. It's just that that has to be done either at the same time as all this dismantling and safety and relationship building work, or we might have to put it on the back burner and really just focus on eating enough, regulation, really practical self-care with your food, movement, sleep, all the things. And so this is what this community teaches, and that was the way I was taught, and that's why a lot of times you not hear me talk about intuitive eating principles too much, because all of that is accurate and super amazing, and I so deeply honor and respect the authors of that book, because it created this revolution you're seeing now, and it's a godsend. It's amazing. And we tend to see things on paper as like, here's the rules now. And so you have to kind of take all these things, okay, yes, and where am I at in my journey, and how much of any of these can I do without getting too bogged down in like the perfectionism. And that's something we're going to talk about as well. So even in module 1, right off the bat, we're talking about like, what's your personal history? What do you know about yourself now in terms of like your mindset and where you're at as to like the first steps to go? And what do you know about the cycle of restricting and the subsequent binging? And if you have all that set, it's much easier to take the first next steps. Okay, well, of course, it's an obvious. Stop dieting. Restricting is just the thing that keeps. It's almost like you're trying to move ahead and you're throwing an anchor, at the back of your car. So it's like it's dragging the ground. So you're gonna move. It's just it creates a lot of friction, a lot of tension, and a lot of frustration, and it's slower. Now that doesn't mean, just like everybody, that we go and stops and starts, and that's really normal too. And I did. I spent 7 years in this purgatory of restriction, binging, and over-exercising because I had a new ginormous stressor come into my life that like took over my capacity to like fully focus on recovery, or at least focus on to the level I could have and still live life. And it was just a really traumatic situation where it's like all hands were on deck to help me like not just be so overwhelmed and dissociated all the time, that I used those tools actually to help me survive. And I knew it was wrong. I didn't want to be doing it, but I didn't know what to do. And I didn't have safe relationships at the time, because I looked more normal. And I knew that was, honestly, I knew that my acting normal made everybody else more comfortable around me. So I stopped being truthful. And this is what this community is about as well. Is like, I'm going to dig in with you, and not at you, but I'm going to call you in around, you're being really quiet, what's going on. You're allowed to be a person who takes in information and assimilates and does it at your own pace, but there's a difference between that and somebody who's hiding and acting as if everything's okay. The more active everybody is in their community with supporting each other and allowing healthy vulnerability with your own circumstances, the more likely it is that you can get your need met. You can know that there's something there for you. You can know that it's safe to reach out. You can take it in. And if you can learn how to take in what's healthy and safe and good and available to you, it makes all the difference with not only your eating, but your ability to take in nourishment. So whether that's a compliment from someone, or a promotion of good work at work, or you have a day off of work and you let yourself just rest and digest. All these things matter so much. And this is what this program and my call-ins in this program are really about, is teaching you how to get clear about where your current need is and how to find it, how to take it, oh, I need this thing, so I need to focus on the key study. Oh, I need to be focusing on body image. Oh, I need to be focusing on and I say all these things really lovingly and gently, is that we have this whole, body positivity and all foods fit, even though not all foods work for every individual. That thing, that's really great for everybody. I would never discourage anybody, but it's not for me. When people say that, it means they're having a fear that it's safe for me to actually reach and have that, or actually take that in, because if there is a room in my system for that, I won't have my old thing for protection. So, we're really going to dig into those topics. And that was me not having that support is what caused that 7-year drought of progress with my eating disorder. And the only way that changed, honestly, is by getting in a relationship with some new people that didn't care about my exercise routine or my food rules And they thought, frankly, it was all pretty like, and it's funny, I ended up falling into a relationship with my now current, as a friendship first, my now current husband, or my husband, and a friend that I've had since college now for, we're working on 20 years, is that, just show up with me, be present with me, that's all I want. And that was a big linchpin, is that I can start to like drip in little drops of like, here's what's actually going on for me, this is actually what I think and feel about things. Can you handle it? Am I too much for you? These were people that I learned how to be more myself with, and that it showed me like, oh, so the past is the past, that I'm not too much for everybody. My feelings, my bigness, my truth telling and seeking, there is enough. You know, there's enough to go around in the world too, that I can get my needs met. And so all these lessons that I've learned, plus all the traditional and the non-traditional teaching I've gotten through my dietetics program and food and non-diet decoding skills. You see that lizard right there? Funny, he's on the other side of the screen, so he's not going to fall on my head. All the training I've had over the last almost 14 years, I'm going to bring to our group here. And of course, all the videos that I continue to do from now until people stop watching. We're going to bring all that, because that's the kind of space I want you all to have, is like, oh, it's safe for me to reach here. It's safe for me to be seen here. And that's what we're going to do. So, does anybody have any questions? I've been talking a good, between 15 and 20 minutes now. And I can keep talking a little bit more about my history. And I know the sun is going behind the clouds, so you can't see my face very well, but nowhere else is actually fully in the... So, does anybody have any thoughts, concerns, questions, anything you want to bring to the table for me to answer for you today? You can ask me about my journey. You can give me a suggestion about something you want to learn about. You can give me a question about your own stuff. Yeah, ask about the program, whatever it is that's important to you. All right. So one last thing I think I'm going to mention. So I'm just going to give you guys a chance to think about, if you want to ask me a question about my history, maybe how I was able to get to, I have some more to mention about that, but anything about the program, anything about topics you have, any concerns you have personally that you want to ask me about, you can. I kind of want to go in a couple of different stages now. So you've got hey, everybody who's watching live. So here, we've been talking about all kinds of things today, but mostly about relationship, mostly about safe and brave spaces around eating and nervous system health, and about the peace with food community. Again, some books. So I had a chance to get a hold of Janine Roth books, and you guys see me, I forgot her first name, but the last name's Kano, Kano, Making Peace with Food. I think that was her book. And Ellen Sadler, that's all I kind of had to go on. And later on, I found more and more books as time went on. And I actually read a lot of books during some of the better phases of my recovery, just around boundaries. And this is the cause of all my problems. I'm just too sensitive. But really, that's not it. It's really about knowing that when you're wired a little more sensitively, and you've had adverse childhood or adult things happen, too much or too littles, basically, above our capacity to cope, is that we do reach for food, restricting, binging, purging, calorie counting, weighing ourselves, all the things, and recognizing it is diet culture that's traumatic in itself, usually overlaying something else that was too much or not enough in our histories that make it so strong, and it feels like we're just looping. So it's like we already had a little bit of, or a lot of, a bit of a small window of tolerance, and then you add diet culture on top of that to like make you feel like, yes, there is something wrong with you. And if there's not yet, you better watch out for it. And that's the message I had. So I'm reading a lot of these different things that weren't quite what we know now. But I started to get the message of like, and I'm going to have to learn how to use that sense of like knowing a lot. And you'd be able to use it for good and not to, make my life miserable. So does anybody relate to that? Where it's like, below, if something like that feels relevant to you, and maybe what have you done to have a better boundary? Like, okay, and I'll give you one quick thing that was a linchpin helping You know, we're unpacking like what I feel fat means and how come we have certain beliefs around certain foods, and working on self-care. And then a client would leave, and they would feel like, oh, happiness was so helpful, and thank you so much. And I would leave like, I feel like I get hit by a truck. And I recognized that point that I was doing this autopilot survival response of being too much into somebody else's space, basically, and taking on their emotions. That's not healthy. There's one, and another to like, I noticed that this person's saying they're fine, but I don't think they really are fine. But let's keep our own boundary and hold a presence of strength for them and openness and love without you hooking into them and they hooking into you, and then they, like, you know, feel all filled up and then you're drained. That's not how it's going. Nature and boundary is that before you go into any meeting, watch any video, go into any group, go from your car to your work, or from your car to your home at the end of the night, is checking with yourself. How am I doing? Hungry or lonely or frustrated or exuberant or relieved or content? And if you notice a shift that's noticeable, it makes you basically get into anybody else's space, because what happens is that we start to take that on. It takes up somebody else's stuff is in your body, in your space, and it's going to possibly impact your ability to feel hunger and fullness. Like the really deep nuances of like, if something's going on with your ability, your hunger, your fullness, what's going to give you pleasure, satisfaction, what do you need to rest, what do you need to feel okay and safe to rest and digest, you know, what's going on in your actual digestion, or how are you digesting your experiences. Everything that's happening with your food and your body and your thoughts and your behaviors have a lot to do with what we need to feel relatively safe enough. And my group is really about helping you grow that capacity for all things, knowing what your food needs are, your needs for rest and care are, and movement, how to get that, how to take it in, like the nourishment. We want to get rid of nourishment barriers. And finally, we want to be able to rest and digest and go over and over and over and do that over and over and over again. So, yeah, I know, Deb. I'm Debbie Young. I'm noticing that like it's really breaking up. My internet's not great out here today, but it will be replayed and you'll be able to see the whole thing. So please hang tight. I appreciate it. All right, friends. If there's not any other questions or concerns, I'm going to hop off. I'm going to put the link below to. So the link below will be for Peace with Food Community, and the registration will be open through tomorrow. If you're interested, I hope to see you there. If you have any questions, you can message me. But I have this video, I have last Sunday's video, and actually when you click on the link, there's a really